My name is Lainey McKinley, and I'll be doing a speech on the history of the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs have always been coined with the nickname of lovable losers. This is part of the rich history of the organization and is just one of many pieces of the long-standing tradition that creates such a unique team. The name lovable loser comes from when the Cubs really were in a drought of losing games, so that's where the loser part comes from. Lovable part comes from people have always been attracted to the Cubs. They really like Wrigley Field, which is where they play, as well as the organizations. They were the lovable losers. The Chicago Cubs went from lovable losers to World Series champions, but how they got there, along with the history of the organization, provides an interesting view on the Chicago Cubs. So throughout this speech, I'll be talking about the history of the Chicago Cubs, the impact that their eventual success had on the city, and the historic superstitions within the team. So factual history. At first, when the Chicago Cubs were created, they were a really good team. They were actually the first team to win back-to-back World Series titles, which occurred in 1907 and 1908. After this, they won a lot of National League pennants, but they never won a World Series championship. They went to many of the World Series, but eventually lost all of them. So they went from an extreme high to extreme low, then back again. They rose again in 2016 and have finally won it after 108 years, which broke the streak of losing. And so this information was found on the Cubs timeline on the Chicago Cubs official website. To continue on, and what I think is really important about the history of the Chicago Cubs is the impacts it has on the city. So when you have a winning team, it really positively impacts the city itself. So in this case, Chicago. When the Cubs won the World Series in 2016, it really impacted the city because when you think about it, there's more revenue through sales, so people want to buy tickets and want to go to games. They also want to buy T-shirts and different souvenirs, also go to restaurants and watch the game, as well as even if they're at home, they're going to be buying more food because they want to feed people if they're inviting people over. So there's a lot that goes into it a lot of people don't think about. So the Chicago Cubs having a winning season really impacted the city. This is also seen 4 months earlier when the Cleveland Cavs won the NBA Finals. It really impacted Cleveland as well, just both being cities that are on the more corrupt side. There's also a lot of intangible impacts that impact the city. So kind of going off the point previously made, Chicago, it as well as the state of Illinois, is very corrupt. So when the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, and even before they won it, just within the World Series, the 7 games, there's a feeling throughout the city of hope and togetherness in a state and city that is full of corruption that you couldn't really describe. It was just there. It was a feeling, and it was very special, and it really, you could feel that the city was united as one for once. So going on, there's many historic traditions within the Chicago Cubs organization. The most historic one is the Billy Goat curse. So there was a man named Billy Goat, and he and this is actually Billy Goat and his goat in this picture, if you can see it well. And so Billy Goat went to a game one time with his goat, and he wanted to bring the goat into the stadium, but they wouldn't let him. And so he got really mad because he wanted to. So he said that the Cubs were going to not win the game that they were playing currently, as well as they weren't going to do well for a very long time. And in fact, they lost the game, and they didn't win for 108 years. So it was always seen that the Billy Goat created the curse of the Cubs not doing well, and then the nickname of lovable losers because they were doing so bad. So a lot of this information was found through the Chicago Cubs Billy Goat curse, explained through the USA Today article. Also, there was another curse, which is the black cat curse, and this occurred when a black cat went onto the field and circled Ron Santo in the batting circle. At the time, the Cubs had a substantial lead and they ended up losing the game, so they thought that was because of the black cat. But obviously that's not as historic as the Billy Goat. But that information was found through the Curses of the Cubs CBS News article. So in conclusion, the Chicago Cubs went from being lovable losers to World Series champions, but how they got there, along with the history of the organization, provides an interesting view about the Cubs. So just to close it out, the Chicago Cubs is something that is important to many people. It's important to me as it's something that I will pass along to my kids when in 2016 they won it, and just the impacts and the intangible impacts of the city, as well as just a lot of unique things that happened and occurred. So the Chicago Cubs are much more than just winning and losing and just the game itself of baseball. It's a lot more than that goes into it.